And we're back with filmmaker Ken Burns, whose new documentary, The War in Vietnam, will air starting September 17th on PBS. Ken is here to give us a preview on this weekend where we honor those who were lost in the service of their nation. And Ken, I want to do something we don't normally do, which is we're going to take a look at the trailer first and then talk about it. So sweeping and powerful. I want to ask you about the journey you took in making this. Did you go in thinking, oh, it's this way, and come out thinking, no, it's really this way?
I think every film that we tackle is like that, where you have that conventional wisdom, the superficial sense of what took place. You know, you say the 1920s, you think flappers or gangsters, and if you go into it, it's a little bit more complicated than that. For those of us who worked on this project, and particularly Lynn Novick, who's the co-director with me, you know, we go in confident that we know something. And I think the 10 years that we spent working on it is almost daily humiliation of what we didn't know, John. And that's a good thing, because then you free yourself from the tyranny of that conventional wisdom, the tyranny of the kind of binary yes and no that besets our current media culture and our larger computer world, that we think it's all black, all right, or all wrong. And what you find out in war is that it's possible for a thing and the opposite of that thing to be true at the same time. And it's not saying that the dates of the Battle of Gettysburg change from July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It just means if you have the passage of time, you have perspective. And with perspective and new scholarship, you can gain new insight. And if we think, as I believe we do, that a good deal of the divisions we experience today in our country were born, the seeds were planted, the virus started in Vietnam, then it may be possible, if we can get off that binary sort of position that we're all in, to be able to kind of unpack and then relearn the war, we might be able to address some of the things that beset us today, this lack of civility and civil discourse, the things that threaten us perhaps greater than any enemy.
A huge dose of perspective is what you're talking about.
This is what history offers. I mean, we think of documentaries as all about the urgency and fuss and fire of a contemporary issue, but it's often histories that tortoise that keeps going and comes along as the hare gets tired and sits down and sleeps. And so I think you can find, I mean, if I said, well, John, you know, Lynn and I have been working for 10 years on a film about mass demonstrations taking place all across the country. It's about asymmetrical warfare in which the greatest military on earth is having a hard time figuring out what to do. It's about a White House concerned about leaks. It's about a huge document drops in front of the American public and an activated free press. You'd say you've abandoned history and you're talking about the contemporary moment, but those are just a handful of the themes that are about Vietnam. So they offer us a prism through which to see where we are now as well as what happened then.
I want to, you and Lynn Novick talked to so many people, including members of the Viet Cong, and I want to play a clip of one of those perspective-enhancing moments.
Tôi đã chứng kiến là phía bên Mỹ người ta mất, khi họ bị thương á, họ cũng kè với nhau, rồi họ cũng khiêng xác với nhau mà họ khóc rất nức nở. Người Mỹ cũng như người Việt của chúng tôi thôi, cũng có cái tình thương bao la như thế.
What was amazing in watching this is that you have that sense of humanity from perspective, and then you have soldiers, American soldiers, who said how much they hated in the moment.
So I think what happens, the first casualty of war, people say, is the truth, but it's also, we have to objectify the enemy and turn them into nothing. We have to say that they are subhuman. And what we felt is that the Vietnam story is the story about three countries: the United States, our enemy North Vietnam, and a third country, which, oh, by the way, disappeared in the course of this story, which we still really don't like to talk about them. But we felt if we could go back and interview dozens and dozens of Americans across the spectrum of beliefs and geography and experiences, but also talk to Viet Cong guerrillas and South Vietnamese Marines and South Vietnamese civilians and diplomats and protesters of their own government, and then North Vietnamese civilians and North Vietnamese soldiers, you would have the ability to triangulate the story of this most important event, I think the most important event in the second half of the 20th century for Americans. You could triangulate this story and come to some better understanding. And it's not just policy, it isn't just the binary stuff, it's also the emotional stuff, this is like Shakespeare's Rialto speech, you know, in which someone is, you don't expect a Viet Cong soldier to be saying that about Americans. We expect Americans to say the same thing.
Ken, I'm going to have to stop you there, but we're lucky enough to be looking forward to seeing you and your co-director, Lynn Novick, again in September to hear more about the film right on the eve. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Back in a moment.